Oh, hi. Rob G here, and welcome to the latest. Oh, I'm spilling all over the place. Welcome to the latest Killer POV. This is, what is this, episode 7? 7.
Yes,
Seventh
episode
episode.
7.
I am one of your hosts, and I'm joined by my co host, Elric Kane. Hello.
Hello to you too, Rob. We're missing the V to our PO.
This is it. This is it. I think.
I wonder where she is.
She's about to give birth now.
Yes,
That's
or be
the
cut
story.
open. She's going to be cut open tomorrow morning.
Yes. So.
Like
Hopefully...
like how I give that a horror spin.
So we're gonna get into graphic detail next week about that.
Yeah,
I
hopefully
guess.
if it doesn't go too badly, she will be back next week to discuss it with us. But I hear sometimes these cesareans can knock people out for a few weeks.
Oh, all right.
But you know,
So unfortunately, you're stuck with just us, the guys.
You
There's no female.
well, not just
perspective
us. There
here.
will be another guy.
We do,
joining us.
yes, we do have another guy. You know, this week we had a little bit of a mix-up trying to get our guests in order, but it all worked out great. We got a good guest that came at the very last minute. That's essentially going to co-host with us because he's got a very wonderful perspective on horror. I've talked to him extensively over many drinks about horror stuff. So
And he made a film probably a lot of you actually really dig called The Hills Run Red.
yeah, talking
Mr.
about Dave Parker.
There you go.
Yeah, love Dave.
And he has a new film that I haven't seen, but you have seen.
Yes.
That we won't go interview him about today because it's still early days, but we will definitely like to
We'll
hear
touch
about
on it.
Yeah,
We'll touch
cool.
on it a little bit. So the big news is this: Elric, myself, and Rebecca all saw the new Evil Dead last Friday, which is funny because Elric was the holdout. He's like, "I'm gonna wait till
I
opening
really
night."
wasn't going to go. I wasn't going to go, and I was holding out. And then when I heard that, the thing that turned me, I think, was that I heard it was going to be a big, big, big like audience. I thought it was going to be one of what I think I mean is these little screening rooms
Right,
with
no,
7
no.
journalists. I think I'm done with that.
No, is that a real
Chinese man.
It was the man's Chinese, and half of it was press, and then they opened up half of it for fans.
And the coolest thing, it wasn't just press. It was every person I've ever met at any party. And I've never seen them all in one place. Even at parties, I haven't really. It was so cool looking around the room and seeing all these different faces and going, yeah, we're here for it. And talk about a crowd. I mean, that's a tough crowd.
Yeah.
I would say probably if you interviewed all of us, probably in our top 5, all of us would have Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2
Yes.
in all-time lists. So that's a crowd that's not going to, if they step wrong
Yeah.
with this remake, it could have gone pretty ugly.
Right, and we're gonna delve a little bit into remakes since that's kind of the topic.
That'll be our
that's
general
fresh in our-
conversation.
Yeah, fresh in our mind. But I guess you guys probably want to hear about Evil Dead before it comes out, and obviously we're going to try to keep it as spoiler free as possible, so that so that you can go in kind of fresh. But we definitely want to give our general thoughts.
Especially anything that was in the trailers open though. So if you haven't even watched the trailer, like I didn't,
Yeah, I really envy Elric for not seeing the trailers and getting to see it fresh. My feeling, here's the thing. Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, I kind of love the movie. But when I walked out of the theater, I only liked it. I didn't love it as much as everybody else because everybody around me was going nuts.
minority. He was definitely in the minority.
And
This was a killer screening. Like
Yeah,
they killed the screening.
Yeah, and it didn't mean that I didn't. I just, the thing that got me was, yes, there are specifically 3 things in the trailer. And I mean, the whole trailer is like standout moments.
Right.
But there are 3 things that are not in the final movie. And for me as a fan, I found that terribly distracting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to give examples because I don't want to, again, spoil it for anybody. But you see something happen to one character in the trailer. And then in the movie, the character's out of the movie. But all I kept thinking is, oh, well, they're obviously going to come back because of that moment that I saw in the trailer.
Right. So it gave you this anticipation that never happened.
And when it never happened, and the credits roll, you feel a little disappointed because you're like, oh, wait, I was waiting for that other thing that was in the trailer that looked kind of cool. So that was my initial reaction, was I was a little disappointed, and not in the film itself or the experience, because it was a great experience and it was a lot of fun to see with people. The thing I keep telling people is that it's a fun audience movie. It's not punishing to the audience. It's punishing to the characters themselves.
Yeah, which is a nice change. That's, I think, a direction we should be going in at the genre.
Yeah, if you got to do horrible things, have your characters do it to each other.
Yeah.
at our, for our amusement and entertainment.
Exactly.
So yeah, I like the movie a lot. First half hour where they try to set everything up and kind of set up the whole reason they're there, which is that one of the characters is detoxing.
Yeah, for me, that's the strength of this whole. No, not the strength of the whole movie. Once it gets going, is the strength of this movie. It's the exhilaration you kind of get. But the best thing about this, and the thing with remakes in general, when we get onto the remakes we love, you'll find that most of the great ones have a totally different, not completely, but a majorly different reinterpretation of the original.
Yeah.
And the ones that try to kind of trace it, i.e. Gus Van Sant's Psycho or something like that, it becomes very difficult. And this film, because of the giving, purely for the one reason that they gave reason for kids to be going to the cabin, completely sold me straight
and
away.
Reason not to leave.
Reason not to leave. Two really just smart moves.
Yeah.
And reasons to also, and this is getting a little more spoilery, but I'm not going to spoil it, is also reason to think that one of the characters might have, to kind of believe that if they're looking a little fucked up,
it's because
they're an addict, you know,
and detoxing. So
exactly, and so those things together, and especially for one reason. The one thing that's amazing about this film is that it's coming almost like the 1-year anniversary of the movie that was meant to put a nail in the coffin of Cabin in the Woods movies, being Cabin in the Woods.
Right.
And, I really did think, no one's ever going to be able to do that again. I thought that's it. And then I realized, nope, they just put a nail in the shitty ones.
Yeah.
And this just shows you can make, this movie's more entertaining than Cabin in the Woods. It's more fun, and it's a better horror film than Cabin in the Woods.
I love Cabin in the Woods.
I do too. It's a smart film.
But I know a lot of people that don't like it because they were expecting some kind of kick-ass horror movie that took place at a cabin in the woods, which, and it wasn't that. So I think this is the movie. The new Evil Dead is the movie that people wanted Cabin in the Woods to be.
Cabin in the Woods is perfect for what it is, but it's also, if anything, I'm thinking now maybe it was a nail in the coffin to self-referential satire horror.
Yeah.
Because it's awesome. It's perfect.
Yeah, you can't it doesn't
really
need
anything
top
else.
It for
exactly.
satire.
But I think maybe we misstepped because what we just realized is, it's just that the Cabin in the Woods subgenre, if that's even one, just tends to make crappy films. That's really what it's saying. And this one is not a crappy film. This film, the purpose, the intensity of the film, once it gets going, the speed in which it all goes. I mean, this is a fast-moving film.
Yeah, pretty much the last hour. Once like once the shit hits the fan, it's like it does not let up for the whole last hour of the movie.
I mean, and people, everyone's read online, it's got buckets of blood. I mean, literally more than buckets of blood. Skies of blood, buckets of blood, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of carnage in this film, a lot of just really creative deaths. And the best part is I never really felt like I was rewatching Evil Dead. No, only a couple moments that were more like references or nods to the film. It never stepped on its toes. The worst thing you can do when you make a remake is tarnish the original. And I've had that happen so many times where it makes me less interested in the original, or kind of sequels do this a lot. By sequel 4 or 3 even of Scream, I liked Scream 1 less. I shouldn't feel that way because Scream 1 is a perfect movie.
Right, but
had there never been sequels, you know what I mean? And so I felt like with this one, I really just felt like it was only enhancing my love of the original while going off its own way. The weakness for me of this film was character development. I felt a couple of the characters are really well drawn, and they're the fun ones. There's two, the girlfriend character I felt was completely wasted. They could have made so much more of her, and the relationship to the boyfriend is like, I know nothing about them.
Yeah, that's true.
Nothing. I mean, even less than the original Evil Dead, and you know nothing about anyone in that film.
Yeah.
But the main character, and the brother, and the friend character, the school teacher, Lou Pucci Phillips? Lou Pucci?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Lou Taylor Pucci from Chum Scrubber and Thumbsucker. He's great. He kind of steals the show.
He definitely does.
For me as the school teacher.
Yeah.
But the thing about this film that kind of shocks me is like, what I can't understand is how Raimi saw this potential in the director based just on the shorts that he had done. Because this film feels so accomplished. It feels more like Raimi. I see Raimi's hand in it.
Yeah.
I really don't understand.
I mean, I have a little bit more insight because I ended up doing the interviews with a lot of the people for FEARnet, which I think will be on our website a few days after this airs.
Right, closer to time.
And, one of the things I found interesting about the director is obviously they Raimi and Tappert picked him up after Panic Attack.
Right, his robot
So
short.
they were developing a completely different type of movie with him for a long time. And he mentioned that Evil Dead came up fairly early on, because it's like, oh, you've been working with them for a while on something else, and then it's like, what did you think when they said Evil Dead to you? And he said it actually came up really early in the conversation for him. So
was he a fan? Was he a big fan?
Oh yeah, huge fan. Yeah. so it came up early with them while they were collaborating, and I just guess through conversations over the course of a year, I assume Raimi and Tapper thought, all right, this guy is probably the guy. You know,
It's I mean, I saw he did kind of a haunted house short
Uh-huh.
before the robot short.
Well, the thing that clinched him
wonder-
actually was he was the only filmmaker that came in to pitch for it that said, I don't want Ash in the movie. We just can't do it with Ash.
Right.
And they were like, oh, and obviously Bruce, who is also producer, you know, perked up to that idea. Like, great,
Right.
I like that too.
Right, we're not remaking that character, which is what everyone over the years has been saying. They're like, oh, the guy from Buffy, he could be the next Ash, or this guy
Yeah.
could. And by nixing that, I actually thought Jane Levy was going to be the Ash character. Even up
Yeah.
until I sat in the theater, I actually thought she was going to.
Well, you know, it's funny because if you really want to look at it play by play with the original movie, I'd say technically David is kind of Ash.
Right.
You know, it's like the
But it
boyfriend that's a
feels
little
like
bit
it's
of
a
a
bit of a-
coward, you know?
Yeah, it feels like they're going to trick you with that.
Yeah.
It's hard to know. It's a film that it's like there isn't that much character development. It's not a classic movie in that vein, but it felt to me like the first real horror film I'd seen in years
Yeah.
that had the feeling of how films felt when I was young.
Yeah, I mean,
And that's the one thing I can't think of a better praise from a horror fan.
yeah,
you know?
I mean, if you're a young kid now that sees this for the first time, you're
Gonna
just
blow
going to
knock your socks
lose your
off.
mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, it's a lot of fun. I can't wait to see it again.
Yeah,
Because
I think that's
it's definitely, I cannot think of a gorier movie playing in theaters with an R rating. I mean, literally, I can't think of anything that's going to be gorier than this that you could see at a theater.
No, and also gory, and also the slow burn has been really popular of late. Partly I think because indie filmmaking,
Mhm.
and I'm a big fan when they're good. Like I like Ty West stuff and all that. But this was such a welcome relief to that.
Yeah.
Just a perfect change of pace because it just keeps going once it gets started.
Yeah.
And there isn't a lot of setup. I mean, I was thinking about it on the way home, going, no, they pretty much get there for like 10 minutes, hang out, and then stuff happens.
Yeah. Did
But
you go back and watch the trailers afterwards? Out
No,
of
you
curiosity?
sent me them.
Yeah,
I'm going
yeah.
to watch them. Maybe if we have a certain guest next week, which is still up in the air, but we hope we have a certain guest.
Yeah.
If that happens, I'll definitely fill it in.
Yeah, we
But-
tried really hard to get Evil Dead related guests for tonight and next week, and that didn't work out because for whatever reason.
Scheduling.
But that's fine.
Yeah, I mean this film, beyond being exhilarating and scary, it's also artistic. It's surprisingly so. But the original is too. The original has the POV stuff is
Yeah,
still really pretty incredible. But it was a real great surprise, and I'm really curious already about sequels, and we're not going to obviously tell you which characters survive and so forth here, but I couldn't help but go like it would be fun to see Bruce Campbell or someone enter the series
yeah,
in some capacity, maybe as a dad character or something. I don't know if they would go that direction, but if they did, it'd be fun if it was played straight
yeah.
in a straight
I just
world.
feel like it would just. I feel like that would be way too distracting.
Yeah.
And I mean, I love Bruce. I'd
Right.
give anything to see him be Ash again or be in a Evil Dead movie again.
Right.
But I feel like this movie's tone
It's so different.
was like if he popped up in this movie for any reason, it would have distracted me. I'm like,
You're probably
oh,
right.
man, this is so
Expectations,
different.
right?
Yeah.
See, I as a guy, I've always wanted to see him act in a serious role to
Oh,
show,
yeah.
hey, look, guys, I can do that too.
yeah, totally.
And I know he can. Well, but Bubba Hotep in a sense is serious, even though it's comedy. But part of me is, you're totally right though. If he popped up, what would happen is the fans would be mad at him for not being the funny character.
Yeah.
No matter how good he is in the movie.
Yeah.
And then so I think you're right. They'll probably never take that risk.
Yeah.
I'd still like to see it.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah,
maybe
it'd
maybe
be
they
fun.
will do, Army of Darkness 2.
But all I know is that, and you don't need me to say this because the amount of people will reach on this compared to their marketing machine, we're twice what they have. But our army, what I would say though is like, you have to see this in a theater. You have to see it twice if you really love it, because just like Insidious, I feel like this is probably since Insidious, this is the most excited I was about just a new horror film.
Yeah.
You have to make these ones have to make money.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
can't, if Paranormal Activity and things are the only ones that keep making a ton of money, they're going to keep not putting any money into making them,
Yeah.
making them look like, dog shit.
Yeah.
This is a beautifully shot film. That's the other thing. This is like, artistically, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And so I want to see, more of these movies. And I think, and so we're probably in just a couple minutes, we'll be on to remakes in general with Dave as well. But it definitely makes you go, okay, so let's think about why it succeeds compared to so many remakes we're going to discuss in a second. And all I can, the number one thing is, hey, creative team is Robert Tappert, Bruce Campbell, and Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
And that this is precious cargo to those guys.
Yeah, of course.
So they are casting. They are, they're at every stage. It's not just, hey, Fiddy, go make Evil Dead.
Yeah, no, there's a big difference when the original creators behind a property are involved as much as possible with it. I mean, the care shows it, unlike, a major studio, not to knock them because sometimes they do make a great remake, but, unlike them who are just looking at it as a stock title, something
Right, it's a marketing thing.
Yeah, it's something that always makes money when they put it out on DVD, and it's like, oh, we should remake that because
interesting
that
enough,
really
one of the
well.
worst has been all the remakes thus far of Carpenter's work.
Yeah,
I look at those and I go, wow, so that's clearly not somebody who was involved in those remakes.
any
he
of them,
just
yeah.
sold them, and they're uniformly bad. I'm thinking The Fog's one of the worst. Sorry, Matthew.
by
Perry
far.
Holmes. It's a terrible movie. What was the most recent one?
Most recent Carpenter.
Fog, Halloween, obviously, but that's
Halloween.
obviously a totally different direction. There's there's another one.
Lockout, if you want to consider that.
Yeah,
Escape from New
Lockout.
York.
Yeah, and I know a couple of people. Were you one of the ones who liked it? Because I know it was Brian Collins liked it.
I haven't seen it, but I hear a lot of
really
people
hated
dig it.
Oh man, I hated it so hard.
Mm.
I was just watching it because I knew this will be fun.
Mm.
I just thought every second of it was just like, oh my god, like just dumb. It just felt like such a dumbed down movie for me. That was just
Right.
and I love I love the Escape from New York. I'm not a big Escape from LA fan, but it's fun. But
I got to
it's a
give it
little-
another chance. But you know what? Why don't we bring our guests in since we're delving into
Yeah,
the
we're getting
remake
towards remake.
category.
So the last thing we'll say about Evil Dead is that, you keep the creative teams in place, and maybe, even if they're not directing and producing necessarily, if they're there to care for it and nurture it, these films have a real chance, I think.
Yeah.
Remakes.
So I know people hate remakes and stuff, but Evil Dead is definitely one I think that's worth supporting because honestly, I'd love nothing more than ridiculously gory like Cabin in the Wood movies to be mainstream.
And a sequel. I want to see a sequel to this thing. I want it to be like,
Yeah, they'll do. I heard they do 2 and 3 back to back if this does well.
Well, I mean, it does open up that funny, would you remake Evil Dead? You can't remake Evil Dead 2. And Evil Dead 2 is really a remake
of the first one, yeah.
of the first. It's not a sequel. And I know we were talking about it before, and they still claim it really isn't. There's no way that's a sequel to the first.
No, definitely not. It's a do-over.
Yeah, disown. Yeah, exactly. It's a do-over with money. Let's remake it with money.
Yeah. So we have a special guest sitting in with us now. Please welcome Mr. Dave Parker. What's up, Dave?
Hey guys, what's up?
Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming down on such short notice. I literally just called Dave right before we did this, and he happened to be around.
Glad to get the call.
We wanted him. I saw Coldwater a few months ago. Actually, I talked about it, I think on our third episode quite a bit. So I wanted to have Dave on a little bit closer when that came out at some point, but I'm glad that we got you in now.
Wait, he'll answer this question.
Yes.
What is the other bad Carpenter remake that they've done besides
as of late?
Fog and
The Fog, Halloween.
Oh, The Thing.
The Thing. There you go.
Is there another one? I feel like he sold another. Well, there's all this talk about Escape from New York, right?
Right. Yeah.
Is that it?
That's it, I think, because we're talking about Carpenter's his remakes have not.
Wait, we're talking about
basically
basically
nothing to do with his remakes.
And the evil,
except collect a check that he's
which
of
he's
course.
probably enjoying. But the Evil Dead remake, one of the ideas maybe is that's why it's a good film, is because
Keep the creative
these
force
guys were
behind
still
it.
involved somehow and they still cared about it and made decisions.
Well, I mean, I think the difference is too that Sam Raimi has a place of power to basically tell everyone else to take a hike if they go, no, we really think you should do it this way. It's like, oh yeah, I own it. This is mine.
Yeah.
Whereas Carpenter doesn't own it.
But he's
Yeah.
on Twitter
Yeah.
at the Horror Master. Tweet him right now if you're listening.
But he doesn't own any of those
That's true.
That's
properties
true.
except
Yeah.
for the story rights and stuff like
Right.
that. So it's like they can do whatever they want. I think that might have something to do
And
with
he's
it.
not a player anymore. Like, to us, he's a god. To the studios, he's really not.
Yeah.
He's not an active
He's not
filmmaker.
making them money. I mean,
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's the name of the game.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all about making money, and that's a fine aspiration, but it shouldn't be the only one.
And Raimi and Peter Jackson, I always think of them as such like cosmic twins. Their careers are just so fascinating because they both starred in low budget splatter.
Yeah.
They both end up making kind of almost Oscar films, like with A Simple Plan
And Heavenly Creatures.
and Heavenly Creatures, and then you get to the next level where they make the blockbusters. Both do really well, and then I felt like at a point they both kind of lost, like by Spider-Man 3 and Lord of the Rings finale, I felt like they both lost touch maybe with audience a bit, and then they well, Sam Raimi did the smart thing, and I think he brought it back by making a small horror film. And I keep waiting for Peter Jackson to do that. I keep going, man, I'd love.
He always
to see
keeps threatening it.
But
the problem is, he goes,
for it.
well, if I do a small horror film, the entire city of Wellington will be out of work because I can't hire them all.
Sorry, guys, back in New Zealand. Yeah. But I mean, no, it's true. It's even bigger than that. The whole country basically relies on him now, and it's kind of. But I do miss that. I think sometimes the epic and the intimate, you get too far away from being able to make intimate things.
Yeah, absolutely. You can get moments.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I for me, The Hobbit, I was like, I just didn't connect at all. I don't know. I was trying.
Well, I'd seen it.
Yeah.
3 times before, and I'm still always going. At the end of The Hobbit, they do the same damn thing. It's like, just get on the Eagles and fly there. And why do the Eagles drop them off on this precarious mountaintop instead of at least dropping them on land?
And why not get the Eagles from the first part? Like, we eat dinner at Bilbo's house. We're going to hop on the Eagles in this movie. Let's do this.
Exactly.
Wow.
But that's a different show.
Yeah, I was like, is this a horror podcast, right?
But yeah, let's talk about remakes and sequel. I mean, sequels to a lesser extent. So let's start with remakes. Like, what are some of the remakes that we love? I mean, there's only one right answer. What's the best horror remake of all time?
The Thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly,
And The Fly.
Yeah.
Very close second.
And both are real interpretations of an original text, like totally.
But the other one too. Sorry, Philip Kaufman's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1978.
On the top of my list, my number one favorite, even though I think The Thing is the best, Invasion of the Body Snatcher, Philip Kaufman.
Wow.
I think that film, I all three, actually, I love every interpretation of that. Even Abel Ferrara's I think is good. But man, Philip Kaufman's gets under your skin, and the final moment between that and Don't Look Now, Sutherland's got it locked down on most shocking last moments of a movie. I think it's such a great movie.
Yeah.
But then there's also there's two different kinds of remakes. I was thinking, well, there's shitty remakes, but of the good ones, I feel like there's the one that's super loyal to the original, like Savini's Night of the Living Dead.
That's one of my favorites, actually.
I think it's great. Yeah, I think it's a really good one. Let Me In is obviously super, similar to the original, to the point where it felt unnecessary. But I also thought it was one of the best directed films I saw that year. I was like, it's really well made. I just don't care because I just saw the other one. It felt a little too close. The Ring was so similar, and yet they both work really well. But that doesn't excite me that much. These ones whereas like Evil Dead, The Thing, Invasion, they all feel like they did something quite different.
Yeah.
Or through the director who maybe is somebody who's doesn't.
And the time.
Right.
And the time when the times when it was made too. I mean, in that sense, it takes on a whole different sort of
context
slant to it. Whereas the other ones are usually so close together. Funny enough, a modern remake done by John Carpenter that feels more stale than the original is Village of the Damned.
Yeah, it's really one of his weakest movies.
It's just, I think the casting is what.
Yeah.
Casting kind of killed that movie.
For me, I think what I've actually come up with this idea of what I think would be a successful remake test, like to equate if I think a remake is successful. And it started with Maniac, because the new Maniac I think is terrific. It's one of my favorite remakes, and it's different enough from the original that I think it would make a neat double feature. So seeing the original Maniac with the new Maniac back to back. Yeah, there'd be similar tone and certain story elements, but I still think it'd be like watching two really interesting movies. And now that I think about it, all the remakes that I love, like I think it'd be cool to watch the original Evil Dead and the new one back to back. I think all the ones you mentioned, the Thing from Another World with John Carpenter's The Thing, great double feature,
and then not the other one.
And not the third, prequel.
First 20 minutes of that new one, I didn't mind. I was like, oh, I'm getting into this, and then I was like, oh god.
I kind of sort of liked the new one when I initially saw it, and it made me immediately go back and watch the first movie because it ends right where it picks up. But revisiting, it doesn't have really good revisit value. It just makes you appreciate Carpenter's all the more.
And it also seems like the people who remake them, if it's like really a passion, if it's not just a job. Like, so with Carpenter, we know, like, as a young guy, he sees this movie and it filters into his brain for 30 years. And it, like, just infects your thoughts. And then it comes out in a wholly new way. That, to me, is like, that's great filmmaking, because has been part of his mentality since he was a kid. Don't they even show it on Halloween with the kids are watching it?
Yeah.
So I think I got the feeling of that from The Fly, too. And that's a remake worth talking about. Like, what makes that so unique?
I mean, I think, I think with The Thing, I think a big difference is that, Carpenter is a well-read guy, and he read the original story. So when he was, approached to do this, he goes, "Oh, well, I'm not going to just do the big carrot guy walking around in black and white. I'm going to go back to the original story, which is probably the concept in the original story was more complicated to do at that time." And it's funny with the I just go back a little bit, the suggestion of watching Maniac, the original and the remake back to back. It would be a really interesting thing, but I think what you would notice more than you probably would just watching the Maniac remake on its own is how much from the original movie is actually in the remake.
Yeah.
That's what surprised me, and how they did it in their own way, but it is a legitimate true remake. It's not just here's the concept and go off.
See, I struggle with that remake of all of the remakes was the one I could least get my head around, simply because the original Maniac to me I've always loved it. I don't know if I consider it a great film. I consider it an amazing performance. I think that character he creates is so great. So when people talked about remaking, I was like, how do you remake him?
Well, that's
like,
the
how
thing.
Do you,
they didn't even try.
Right.
They went the total opposite
with
way.
the POV.
Which was, with Elijah Wood.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't go any farther from Joe Spinell than Elijah Wood. So that's what really sets it apart. Just, in boldness right there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just it's relevant to the time because, early 80s, Joe Spinell in New York City. That totally makes sense
like
to
your
me.
Taxi Driver, yeah.
Current times, downtown LA, kind of hipster looking dude.
Right.
Totally makes sense to me.
That's interesting.
So.
Right. So it's the filter, just like you were talking about, it's the context, like the thing took on the context of a time period where it's about who do we blame, kind of the invisible monster is as powerful as when we actually start seeing the monster. Whereas back in the 50s, you could get away with a carrot head and that'd still be scary.
Yeah.
Except,
but the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers did the invisible monster.
It was all communism.
Too. But going to the Fly remake, I think that's a case where Cronenberg didn't really like the original movie that much at all.
Right.
And was like, okay, I'll take the one shred of something which is, teleportation. What can I do with that? And, then again, what was going on in the time. See, I don't know. It's like, they keep threatening another Fly remake.
And wasn't he attached?
He was going to do one, yeah.
He wrote a script.
That would be interesting. After doing an opera as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
which I saw the opera. And that was, I'm glad I went.
But it's not
very good.
There's a reason that it didn't go wide.
Wow.
It was really weird.
See, opera, not a musical, because him and Rebecca were giving me smack for liking musicals. And I'm like, hey, Evil Dead the musical, Reanimator the musical, Silence, they were all great. They put fun comic twists on things. Those are remakes in their own sense.
Well, why do we need to put fun comic twists on things?
We don't. But at the same time, it's like it's
it makes sense for those because they have so much comedy in them already.
Yeah,
except for Silence of the Lambs, which is.
I mean, Reanimator the musical was the only one I think I've ever gone to, and I was pretty surprised how much fun I had. I did have a really good time. But then if I compare that to say going to see Combs on stage doing Poe, there's no one of them it's going to stay with me for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
The other one was a good night out.
Right.
And that's same with good horror and good comedy to me. I love a good comedy. I just don't think about it again. I enjoy it in the moment. Horror stays with me. It's just we're all wired differently like that. It's interesting. But yeah, The Fly, The Fly is one of those ones that really kind of grossed me out and creeped me out when I saw it young. And I think it's just such a great vision filtered through somebody who was already doing stuff on a smaller scale of body horror and then bringing it to like what felt like a major studio film.
It was.
And so there aren't many of those, horror films that are major studio films, not just.
But he had done one before, too. He had done two before. Videodrome and Dead Zone were major studio
Right. Yeah, well, Dead Zone especially, which is also a great film. I mean, adaptations would be also another interesting angle. What are some of the others? I wrote down some that, like, personally, I kind of think Cat People's fun, but it's weird. I don't think of it as like a great remake. I really liked House on Haunted Hill. I had a really good time watching that. And again, I think some of these films like William Castle, remaking films like that, and The Fly, it seems that's a better way to go because it's like high concept, kind of like exploitation films now have become reality TV because the concepts are good. The films aren't always good. So you can remake a concept better than you can remake a great film.
And sometimes the concept is still good and they still make a bad remake.
That's for sure.
13 Ghosts.
Oh, yeah, that one that was pretty rough. What about you guys? Did you like Let Me In?
I really liked Let Me In.
Yeah.
I mean, the one, and I'd seen Let the Right One In before. and thought that was amazing. But I thought the cats were a little silly in it. And the two new young actors in Let Me In, I just thought were fantastic. I mean, Chloe Moretz is probably, I mean, she's a powerhouse, and she's not even 18 yet.
Yeah.
It's crazy how good of an actor she is. And I really liked Richard Jenkins in it. And that whole car crash sequence was so intense and so good. And the fact that they took the cats out of the remake, I thought was a really smart choice.
No, I remember as soon as I saw it, I had this feeling like, and I said a second ago, I really genuinely thought it was the best directed film I'd seen that year. And not just horror film. I just had this feeling like, wow, that was so well made. But I didn't know if I cared, because I just, I
had major problem with it, and I understand and accept everything you've said in terms of it being well directed and obviously having a really great cast, because they were really great. And the things that I liked about it is when it deviated from the original and became, stuff like the car sequence, which is not at all in the original.
And Elias Koteas' character wasn't in the original.
No, I think he was a combination of whatever. But to me, what this is where I fault the director, who was Matt Reeves.
Yeah.
Right. By the way, I liked Cloverfield a lot too, so that was one of my favorite movies when that came out.
I didn't really like him. But.
Well, no, he see, you were making the argument before how Carpenter, at least, he was remaking a film, but he also went back to the source material. It's like, here's a filmmaker that cared about all the interpretations before and wanted to do his own thing. Matt Reeves says that he went and read the book, but it's obvious he didn't, because there's one unforgivable element in the remake it's not from the original story, and it's not in the original movie. The original movie the script is written by the author who wrote it. And essentially it's giving away the relationship between her and the older caretaker, who is Richard Jenkins in the remake, and implying that they've been together since they were kids, which was not the case in the book. And even if you rewatch Let the Right One In, the reason the Swedish one's so brilliant is because all the subtle stuff from the book is there if you really look for it, and on repeat viewings it becomes very obvious. But that character, the father character, is actually like a pedophile that she had enslaved and made into, kind of her...
Yeah, that's a lot darker.
Bitch.
Yeah,
so
that's a lot more interesting.
And which is why he's so terrible at killing, because...
But in the same token, in Matt Reeves, if you're going to reinterpret that for a massive American audience, it would be, there are things that always get lost along the way.
Obviously,
like
but to go on as a filmmaker and say, I went back to the book and I did this, I didn't even see the original. It's like, well, you didn't
see the original?
Well,
that I don't buy.
He's they weren't, because there were some shots that looked like shot for shot from the original. So to say that the original film didn't influence yours at all is kind of BS in my book.
One thing you might not remember it. The thing I was most struck by in the sequel, the remake, was the camera position. Anytime it showed the mother, it wouldn't show her. And I loved that. I got I'd like Charlie Brown or something, but I got really excited about it going like, look, I'm focusing on these characters and you are periphery because you're not present. And I don't think that was the case in the original.
No, but you know what, they
I really liked that.
Because the American one eliminates the weird sexuality behind the original story. No, about the original story, because Ellie in the original story and in the movie, she says that, what if I wasn't a girl? Because in actuality, she's a boy, a castrated boy, which you see that one shot. But they completely steered clear of that in the American remake. And there was like that weird scene with Oscar's father and his friend that, you know what I mean? Like there was
Somebody's going to be watching this movie again now. I'm going to have to watch it again.
You have to. Yeah, I spent a lot of time with Let the Right One In, because I don't know if you knew this, Elric, but that whole subtitle like scandal, if I can call it that, they'd released it. Magnolia had released it on DVD with different subtitles than the ones that played theatrically, and they were kind of quote unquote dumbed down.
Oh wow!
And I was the one that wrote the article on it, which blew up and forced Magnolia to pull it and re-release it with the real. Yeah. So
I saw it in New Zealand, so
they
don't change things there. In fact, even Nil by Mouth plays as if it's English, and Trainspotting, unlike in America, where they subtitle movies in English for the American audience. I remember seeing Trainspotting here going, what just happened? Like, are you telling me there's people in the audience who couldn't actually follow that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, enough about that.
Yeah. But
okay, that's interesting. All right, that's pretty funny.
So I have a lot of personal history with Let the Right One In, and Let Me In. I try to appreciate it as its own movie, but I have a lot of trouble with it because of how closely it sticks to the original, but gets very key stuff wrong.
But they're both beautiful movies. I mean, that's the cool thing. They both look great. There's another kind of, it's not even a remake subgenre, but and I can't think of too many examples off the top of my head, but I like those films that aren't remakes and not untitled, but like there's this art film from England by an Italian director called Blow Up, and then there's Deep Red, which is basically the same story, but filtered through Giallo and Argento. And then years later, there's Blow Out by De Palma, and then there's The Tenant, as the same time by Polanski. And all of these films have, and The Conversation by Francis Ford, all of them body double later on, but they all have, you know, at the core, like the first two are straight, pretty much. Deep Red and Blow Up are very, very close because he casts David Hemmings as the lead in both. But I really like that world of the remake where somebody's more like you're taking inspiration from something, but then it's a totally different movie.
Yeah.
I mean, De Palma's film is not, you know.
Yeah, I was going to say De Palma does that. I mean, the first, a lot. I mean, the first time I saw Dressed to Kill as a kid, I didn't like it because I'm like, this is a ripoff of Psycho. This is just a remake of Psycho. Then the Psycho remake happened, and now I appreciate Dressed to Kill.
Dressed to Kill is one of my favorites. I mean,
I mean, now I appreciate it as an adult, but for a while it was like, I don't know if I like this De Palma guy. His movies are a little too close to those Hitchcock.
Well, no, I mean, he still is. I mean,
definitely takes elements.
Yeah,
like, huge. But I always found it interesting because I think I did see Body Double before I saw Rear Window or Vertigo.
Isn't that a fascinating? I always find that to be the most interesting too, especially our generation, more than any generation because of VHS. We missed a lot of classics, and yet we skipped right to the and because of that, I think it really does shape us. You know, just like I was saying, I saw Reanimator too before knowing there was a film called Reanimator. I was watching the screen going as a kid, going, "What?" There's a disembodied head saying, "You bastard," and I'm like, "What is?" You know,
that's his first image.
That was like one of my first images ever.
That's a pretty good image.
It did, and but you know, I do think that's a really interesting thing about our generation.
Well, you said Rear Window, which then could be
Rear Window is
Fright Night, and then Fright Night to Disturbia.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like,
no, I mean, and then Disturbia to Fright Night.
To Fright Night the remake,
right back again, right, and then we'll just eliminate Disturbia, and pretend it never. No.
Well, that one was.
But yeah,
that seems to be a healthier way to do remakes without. I mean, obviously, it's not the same thing because it's not about the money. Remakes and sequels, are always about, first and foremost, about the money. And
well, yeah, I mean, fans have to realize. Fans like to complain about this a lot, but look, it's the film business. It's called the film business for a reason, and people are putting up money. They want to make their money back.
I genuinely don't think that idea ever translates until you live here. And it might be the same in New York.
Well, yeah, of course.
But I know I never felt that until I lived here. Until you start to feel the pain of how hard it is and just living day to day.
And you know what? People shouldn't have to. I mean, it's one of those insights that we know about because we're constantly
hitting walls and trying to get through them.
We're just stuck in it. But to me, it's just like I don't think anyone sets out to make a bad movie, and I'm sure motivation to make money is overriding a lot of the time, which is weird though, because it's like if you're taking basically a pre-sold product anyway. Say take The Fog for example, which is a remake that I have a huge problem.
Yeah, probably one of the worst
because mostly because of Matthew Curry Holmes, one of the actors, and like a lot of us just don't flat out like that guy personally, right?
Who was he again?
No. I know you can't tell
he's one of those guys on a ship.
But he was on a boat somewhere.
But yeah, that's the point.
But my problem is like here you have a movie that. To me, the original just sort of grows and grows more in my appreciation every time I see it. The ability to maintain the atmosphere and everything else.
It's one of his most underappreciated movies. That movie I saw a lot later as well, and I was like, man, this is an eerie little film.
And also one that Carpenter himself didn't think worked when he initially made it.
Right.
I mean, it's great now in retrospect,
but but it does work, and it's got this creepy atmosphere, and it's just sort of like adding all this stuff to it, the love story aspect of it. It was like, again, I kind of get offended when they're like, they take this and like, oh, let's make it for girls because the lead was a girl
or teens. It's also the teen effect because the first one really isn't a teen film, and then you have people like Adrian Barbeau in it.
No, they're all adults.
And then
Jamie Lee Curtis, except for the little boy, Jamie Lee Curtis is the youngest character in the movie.
Isn't that's one of the big shifts in horror in general and movies in general, right? Is that shift to the teen protagonist and teen.
Because that's who's going to the audience,
Right.
supposedly. But
Supposedly.
they never, that that was the problem I had with, God forgive me, the newest Chainsaw remake sequel thing is like it felt like it was Texas Chainsaw Massacre by way of Beauty and the Beast. It felt like a movie for girls, and I'm like, this is Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah.
Which also made like chainsawing the guy in half seem really tonally out of place with the movie.
Yeah.
And that's also like a marketing mistake from the start, right? Because cool girls like real horror, right? Like you always notice that you go to a good, like I sat next to somebody on Evil Dead who was just bouncing out of their seat and kicking, but loving it. And it was the perfect viewer.
Right.
They don't actually, a lot of them, the tweens, there is obviously Twilight's got a huge following, but there's also a lot of people who they'll just watch a good film.
But I mean, that's the thing. I don't think the girls who are going to see Twilight are rushing out to see Texas Chainsaw.
Right. Yeah. It's just a
3D.
mistake from the start. Yeah.
But it worked. They got the audience they wanted, but the problem is it's only a first week audience because you see the drop on something like Texas Chainsaw 3D. Even the Platinum Dunes, I remember Friday 13th had a tremendous drop after that first week.
Because we are an optimistic bunch. Horror film lovers.
We always want it.
Yeah, look, I see a new Texas Chainsaw, I'm hopeful, and I go, and then I take my money, and I say, I'll never spend another cent. I tell everyone I can, don't spend your money on it. Stop that from happening again. That's what we were just saying 5 minutes ago. Spend your money on Evil Dead so they'll keep doing this. Insidious. Spend your money where, we can make more good films.
We're just always hopeful. We're hopeful that there's a good one out there.
Because we remember when there was lots of good ones.
Yeah.
There was a period when we're growing up, and every week you got to see a new classic or some shot on shitty slasher film that still was more fun than half the stuff now.
Yeah.
2013 seems to be shaping up with Maniac, Evil Dead, and maybe Carrie. We'll see. At least Carrie did the right things in hiring an interesting director with their own kind of unique view, not a horror director. So we'll, see a great actress,
Great actresses.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Julianne Moore as well. Yeah.
So
And
I
great
wonder
cast.
why this year. I wonder what's shifting in terms of how the approach to how they're making these, rather than that period of the Platinum Dunes, just taking entire catalogs and spitting them out.
I think it's just a timing issue. I think in terms of these specific titles, they've been trying to do Evil Dead for the better part of a decade now, and just everything lined up perfectly now. Coincidentally, while Carrie got remade and Maniac.
But again, doesn't it seem also like it's the power? Like he really hit it on the head. I thought with saying that's the power of some of these people. Like Sam Raimi obviously has power, but with Maniac, it's like Elijah Wood has genuine power in coming into horror and deciding he's going to create his own company that's going to be making horror as well. It seems like he brings that clout to say, hey.
That's true.
Well, and, Aja also does because his movies make money.
Yeah, exactly.
They make money. And they made this movie for a little amount of money.
So you can do it
So it's
your
not
way.
a huge risk. At least it's got Elijah Wood's name in it. So I'm sure they were probably at least in profit for the movie before they shot. As far as pre-sales
Could that
go.
film be a big?
No.
Yeah, it looks a little too small.
It's rough. It's a rough movie.
Yeah.
It's artistic as all get out, but it doesn't pull any punches. It's way nastier than what average Joe moviegoer is used to seeing.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not an R-rated film.
Yeah, the horror fans that give it a chance will probably love it for that because it doesn't pull any punches and it's kind of the type of movie that as a horror fan I'm looking for. It's not pleasant. I can't say like, oh, I had fun at that, but it's an effective horror movie.
And it's different from a lot of the movies now because it's not slow burn.
Yeah, we were just
starts
talking about
right
that.
away.
Which is what Evil Dead
does
does too. Evil Dead's surprising. It's 10 minutes of setup and then you're in it. And Carrie remains to be seen.
Yeah.
We'll see.
And Dave, I was curious. I wanted to ask you because I know throughout the years you've flirted with the idea or spoken to people about potentially, some remake titles. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about it because specific things because they fall apart. But I'm saying, from a filmmaker's perspective, what's that process been like in terms of like obviously you're not against the idea of remaking something. If somebody brought an idea of a film that you liked to you seem pretty open and game to put your spin on it. So what's it been like collaborating with, different titles and trying to figure out, what the best way would be to remake something?
I think for me, it always comes down from a place of, if, is there a place of love for the title that's being presented to me
Mhm.
in some way where I can connect with it, where I go, I really want to see this. So that's where it starts out. And then you look at the material that's being brought up, or you're coming up with things. And to me, it's not so much about let's change everything. What I really want to try to do, and I think the best remakes do, is retain the essence of what it is. And that might be certain elements. And I also get fixated on stuff. Like if I was going to do the Funhouse, well, for me, the freak would have to be in it. It's not the Funhouse without the freak for me.
Right.
I just, and I would put him in the Frankenstein mask, and I mean, to me, it's like, you want to like give little nods.
You want to retain those iconic, like, well, the things that seemed iconic to you.
You need
when
to
you
end
first
with
saw them.
Laughing Sally, otherwise I will give you a D- because that sticks with you. It's funny that seriously, I completely agree about the freak, but I also think that end sticks with me. I think about that all the time. That ending, it's so quiet. It's such a quiet way to end a movie and kind of menacing still. And I've seen Laughing Sally. She's at the San Francisco Museum or whatever it is, the place where you play all the pinball machines and stuff. And she's still there laughing. And you're like, okay. But so Roundtable, if you have to remake a movie, would you remake something that is underappreciated? Or is there, because I've thought about it. For me, weirdly enough, the one that always pops up in my mind is Candy Snatchers, because it's not well known. Some people who do know it really like it. I remember talking to Darren Bousman. He was somebody who really liked it. I heard Tarantino really liked it through Bousman, that they had met once and talked about it. I've always really liked it. Great poster, great title, but not a great movie. Has great moments. It's just like people. It's like a abduction movie where they abduct someone and they're gonna cut off pieces of her and send it back for ransom and stuff. But I felt like,
I thought you were thinking. I was thinking of an entirely different movie.
oh really?
like a
porn
recent
film?
one, right?
Isn't there one called Candy Snatchers? That like female alien RNs, nurses, or something?
Yeah,
like that?
like from
Maybe
the
some
last couple
porn.
of years.
Yeah.
No,
I
this is
think,
like
yeah.
a 70s, like
Okay.
it's a
Yeah.
video nasty kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
But like I always think those kind of films, because our crowd are less like, I think it would be really hard to make something like Evil Dead. Like the pressure to remake something that people freaking love. I think for me, I wouldn't even be interested. I'd rather like reinvent something that's and elevate it a little. But I'm always curious about, people always have these things that they think about a lot. Like, everyone's always thinking about Creature of Black Lagoon. There's so many people out there who have been thinking about it their whole life, from Joe Dante to Guillermo, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I find that an interesting question.
Man.
That's a tough one.
I mean, you said Funhouse. Is that one?
Well, I would, except Eli Roth is aboard that thing,
right.
at least as a producer and stuff like that. So that's not going to be an option. And he doesn't want to. He wants to do something different. I don't know where he stands with it, but I know that. But if the opportunity came, yeah, that would be amazing.
This is dreamless. This isn't real.
Yeah,
don't worry
yeah,
about
yeah.
the real. We don't need to talk real here.
But I mean, what would you rather tackle something, if it's dreamless? Would you rather tackle something high profile that's kind of famous, like a Nightmare on Elm Street type of thing?
I still would.
Or something kind of under the radar that not a lot of people know, and you're like, you know what? They don't know that, but it's cool enough that I can make it even cooler.
Yeah, I think so.
I
I think this
like
could be
what? Like if you were going to do one.
I don't know. The Burning could make a. I'm
Burning.
amazed the Weinsteins haven't remade
It is pretty.
that.
That is pretty amazing. That hasn't. And I think that one's, besides the horror crowd, I think people outside of the horror crowd really don't know that.
But what are you going to do with it? What's so different? What would you do with The Burning? And The Burning is just another. It is, and
it's another camp movie.
And I love the movie, but it's another camp movie, and
Right.
it's just a different. It's a guy with garden shears instead. And I don't mean to. I love the movie.
Yeah.
I have the poster hanging up in my place, so I'm not bagging on The Burning, really.
No, I think it starts. I mean, trust me, I don't have a full pitch for what I would do for The Burning right now.
We're gonna do it right now.
It's the thing that stands out for a lot of horror movies for me when I was a kid is if you build some kind of mythology, some campfire story, and start there, like, because when you heard the campfire story of Jason or Freddy when you were a kid, your mind immediately races to 100 other possibilities of, oh my God, well, what if this happened, or what if this happened? So I think that's like the nugget of where my excitement comes from, the idea of taking something that's not very well known, because it's like, well, I remember this element from that. That's what's. I mean, I haven't seen The Burning in years. I don't remember if it's cool. I remember the character, and I remember his weapon and all that. But he was cool. He's memorable enough that I could be like, I could probably come up with a more elaborate story of what they did in the original. That's just off the top of my head. I don't know. I would also remake Psycho, which I know sounds insane, but I've thought enough about those movies.
That is insane. But
And
Bates Motel's
and
giving
they're
it a
already
shot,
doing it now, and they're doing it completely different
Yeah,
than
it's
I would have
totally
ever imagined. So yeah.
It's
I mean,
a fun thing.
there's things that I would love to tackle, and maybe that the
Mhm.
title has some sort of meaning or something like the car.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to do the car
Yeah.
for some reason, or trying to think. I think something like Ghost Story
Uh-huh.
could use a facelift. I think that's
Right.
a pretty cool book. Christine, I'm fixated on car.
The car
killer
thing at
car
the
stuff
yeah.
a little
Yeah.
bit.
Sometimes they come back. You're
Yeah,
gonna
I
work your way
mean-
down.
No, not that one.
No.
And there hasn't been a good killer car movie in years.
Has
I
there
mean,
ever?
Well, because
Yeah.
they're just.
Yeah, there's
I
a
mean,
few
it's
good
just
ones. I like
kinda-
the car.
It's just kind of silly.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. It's just sort of like,
I refuse to accept that Maximum Overdrive is silly. Come on, guys.
right. Of course.
It's elevated.
But
so-
and one that I'd love to do
Mhm.
would be Trick or Treat, the original, the
Oh.
'86 movie.
Oh, all right.
A little rock and roll,
I would say like
Heavy
because things like Friday 13th failed so hard. The remake, I do feel like that one still has a lot of potential to be. I think
Well,
Nightmare on Elm Street they should just never touch again.
failed. I mean, it made it.
Yeah, it
ton
made
of
money.
Right, but
Failed in an
Failed,
like an
to me-
artistic
for me.
sense.
But see, this is the thing I always have a problem with people, because it's like as soon as that
Right.
remake came out, everyone was bitching. Michael Bay fucking ruined Friday the 13th, and I'm going all right. And I grew up with the Friday the 13th movies. They hold a very dear place in my heart. I always have to say this but it's like, okay, you got super hot chicks who are naked. You got a lot of kills. You have Jason in a hockey mask running around. What is so bad about this one that, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 didn't do the same exact thing?
Yeah.
It's
You know what it is, though?
I think it's unfairly bagged on
Mm.
in that sense. Everyone's like, well, Jason's a pot farmer. It makes no sense. It's like,
that's hilarious.
you know,
No, I think for me it's actually something about it's something about the nostalgia, and I think what it is that the Platinum Dunes thing, the one thing they do, it's not about the plot. I agree with you completely. Like there isn't a classic really amongst them,
Mhm.
The thing, unlike Nightmare on Elm Street, I think the thing is it's something about the glossiness of some of these remakes, because we grew up in a time where these films are made pretty cheaply. They are all shot, they almost look like 16 mil, and we often watch them on VHS. So they have this very kind of, I don't know, gritty, not very nice to look at. But then these remakes, starting with Chainsaw Massacre and Friday 13th, look to me like $100 million movies, which could be a good thing to some people. I just know for me, I never was in the movie. I felt like I'm just watching pictures on a wall rather than
that's interesting.
getting caught up in it.
Because to me, it's like, there's 100 movies, if not more, that come out every year that have that shitty, grainy look
Right.
that are just like Friday the 13th. So,
But maybe we don't see them anymore. Like I don't.
well, you have
know.
to go search them out.
Yeah.
It's like they don't get I mean, again, I'd love to do a Friday the 13th.
Mhm.
We have a mutual friend that works for Sean Cunningham. I keep going, I'll do Friday the 13th part 2 for back end points, whatever, free. I don't care.
Yeah.
And I think, if you talk to a lot of us, it's not that, it's like, oh God, I really want to make a Halloween movie. That's my passion. But I think a lot of the filmmakers that we mutually know and everything, we kind of just want to play in that sandbox with those characters because they are so iconic.
Right.
I mean, there's the other aspect of us wanting to create characters that are that iconic too.
Yeah.
Someone I'd love to revisit, a character I'd love to revisit would be Candyman, because that first movie's terrifying.
Yeah.
And that
It's
character
still-
was
it's still
really
great.
terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the last truly scary horror films. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt, one of the things I love about your film, Hills Run Red, is like, there is no doubt you see that you are more than capable of delivering a pretty kick-ass Friday 13th film, because not to say that it's like that, but your aesthetic, it's like
It's more like that than some other.
Then
kind of soft horror.
It had the heart to the material is way more in your original film than it is in the remake,
Right.
by that company.
Yeah.
And
That's
to me,
probably what I
that
mean.
shows a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so.
And then another person who's obviously gone out and tried to create his own mythology that's a lot like those is like Adam Green, right? With the Hatchet films are like somebody who's really trying to recreate a character like that for someone.
Absolutely.
You know, and so there's that.
Doing
That's another way to do it, and they're up to 3, right? So
Yeah. Another remake that would be really interesting. It's like I don't know if I would have the sensibility. I don't know if I would, but you know, it's like I'd love to see a Hellraiser again. I'd love just to like let's get back into that world because I remember when I saw the original movie for the first time. I was so young. I had no idea what S&M was or any of this stuff. I was like, what is this? It's like it was just a whole new world opened up.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see a Phantasm remake.
yeah.
But I do.
You know, there's a couple things about Hellraiser that are interesting. I think the first one's still one of my favorite movies. I think the second's one of my favorite sequels ever made. I just love it. It's a great world. But it's funny how then the sequels tarnish your original thoughts on something. And then you see the original and go, holy shit, that's still great. But you forget over time because they just keep coming. But a guy I know, he had to pitch for a remake of the Hellraiser. And he said they were just completely still focused on the S&M look and stuff that had to still look like that, even though that was coming from Clive Barker, a particular kind of artist, at a particular kind of time. It's like, hey, we can move the look. And then another thing, when I was talking to him, I was like, you know what? They forgot about one thing, which is when he says, angels to some, demons to others in the first. There is somewhere you can go with the look of what it would be angelic without being cheesy, bright on white, and a whole storyline can open up with that. They got so interpreted as just, it's a nightmare hell character. You know?
But the other problem is with all that stuff, and I think the challenge that anyone who does a remake has to face is the fans who don't want anything different.
Right.
They don't want their Jason looking different. They don't want their Freddy looking different. They don't want those pillars of the movie. They don't want different. And a lot of the time they keep complaining. They just want the same old thing. So how do you?
This
win
brings
when
us
you're
back
trying
to
be an
Evil
artist?
Dead, though. No, there's no. I mean, this. I mean, no, you know this by now. There's no Ash character. So by eliminating that character and making a great film, maybe you can get around that. So maybe
again,
there's no Pinhead.
But people are still. I see a million comments online. Oh, if it's not Ash, it's not Evil Dead, and it's like, oh, come on.
I mean, there's that.
But they haven't seen it, right?
But again,
of course not.
Because Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell are deeply involved in this movie, they'll give it more of a shot. They'll give it more of a chance because they're like, okay, the people that we trust who gave us this are in charge of it.
Yeah, I'm with you on the sense that, hey, I don't need a Phantasm remake. I'd rather just have Don Coscarelli get to make another movie because every time he gets to make something new, I have another movie I can watch. Yeah.
Give him a budget.
Right.
Yeah.
Give him $10 million, which is quadruple the budget of any of the movies that he's had, and just see what this guy can do.
Yeah. I think Phantasm 2 was like the biggest budgeted thing he did.
$2 to $3 million.
Yeah.
And that's it.
What was Boba Hotep?
$1 million?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
$1 million or under $1 million.
Yeah.
Wow.
Really cheap. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, because it was singular setting, but even still. Yeah, it's interesting. Lightning round. Best Platinum Dunes remake.
What a challenge.
You want to hear? And I'm going to reveal how much of a dumbass I am because before the show, I wrote that down already in mind going, oh, yeah, this is where I throw down Last House on the Left is easily the best of them, even though I didn't like it much. And then I look it up and go, oh,
it's not Platinum
Dunes. That's why it's good.
I had no idea. I totally thought it was Platinum Dunes.
Convinced, huh?
Even when I saw it, I remember going, oh, that's the first good Platinum. I mean, it's not great, but it's better than a lot of the others. So what do you think?
Really difficult question.
And we
can
do both. You could do best and worst. Is there any difference?
Nightmare is by far the worst that they've done.
I'm down with
and
that.
you know what?
Nightmares, it is because it had the most potential.
Yeah, and I mean, they know how to cut a trailer because all the trailers to all their films still kind of pump me up. That Nightmare trailer was so awesome.
Thank you,
It
Bill
all comes
Neal.
back to it comes back to a quote Roger Corman once said. I think his first real considerable quote was, "In my opinion, the monster should always be bigger than the girl." And unfortunately, in this film, when he first turns around, I kind of laughed, and I remember going, "Oh man." He's like, half the size. He's in the school. It was a brightly lit scene in the schoolroom. And I was just like, oh, you just totally took me out. The first one is so fucking scary when you know nothing about it. Before it was a world.
But, there is a moment in the first one that I always quote, this is when I was defending Jackie Earle Haley, but now it's a whole different story.
Right.
where the first time he's running after Tina in the alleyway. I mean, after This Is God, he looks like this tiny, crazy little.
That's true. Yeah,
Because it wasn't Robert Englund.
Yeah, of course it wasn't.
and
but
he
that
wasn't
moment
Freddy
scared the
Krueger.
crap out of me.
He was a new thing running down a hallway to us that we didn't even know what it was.
Yeah.
And that still works. It's like psychologically, once we already know what it is, and then it's a little guy. Yeah, Jackie Earle Haley as an actor is actually still a really good choice. Because, I mean, he was really scary in Little Children, a film that he was in just before that, like just as kind of a local pedophile. And he's like, it was scary to see a real human with emotions.
Yeah.
But,
Well, I think the other I think the other thing that's unfortunate when you're facing a Nightmare on Elm Street remake is because Freddy became so much in the pop culture and public consciousness and everything.
Mm-hmm.
After you've been out in the spotlight, how do you pull it back in and make that scary when people are used to him doing the jokes and the one-liners?
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to do that is the way Wes tried, which was the Last Nightmare, where
reinventing
make
what
fun
it
of it
is.
too, right?
Yeah.
He has him on a talk show. There's Robert Englund, and that was smart. That was the best chance you have of, and even then, it didn't necessarily completely bring him back.
I have to, and I, to me though, I think the worst Platinum Dunes one for me is The Hitcher.
Yeah,
I think it's an empty movie. I think the idea to take the character and split it into two people was a boneheaded idea.
Right.
Unfortunately, Sean Bean is not a scary guy. No matter how menacing he wants to act, he's no Rutger Hauer, who I didn't, I remember him from Blade Runner.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's the really scary guy from Blade Runner. So I was already terrified of him.
That'd be like my top 5 horror performances for sure.
And
it just keeps coming. You don't understand it. You really feel for this kid because you just and then something halfway through happens towards the end that is unimaginable until you've seen it. Like, you cannot believe they would do that to a lead character.
Yeah.
Like, they're gonna
it's
someone.
great.
It's just amazing. But you're right. This is, I guess, what I was meaning about the Friday 13th is it takes away the grisly quality, the rough edges of these movies we loved and we're kind of surprised by, and makes it so glossy and perfect. It just looks like any other movie, and I don't know. It's kind of like a watering down of something, I guess, to me.
But I don't know. As far as the best goes,
Yeah, the best is hard.
That's tough. I mean, I did actually like the Chainsaw remake when it came out.
Right.
However,
Quite a few people did.
I'm convinced. I rewatched it recently and I didn't like it at all.
I didn't like it.
I'm convinced it was a fluke at the time it
Yeah.
came out, and they accidentally made a good movie, because since then, Amityville Horror, Nightmare, and I mean, there's things I like about Friday the 13th, but I think again it goes back to what I was saying is heart. I mean, they obviously don't understand the Hitcher and how important it is for C. Thomas Howell's character. Like, oh, let's just split him into two people. All these little decisions against the most important integral elements of the original films are like obvious. I mean, they those dudes talk a great game in the when they're doing PR for Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, we love these movies when we were kids, and then you see them and it's so obvious that they didn't even know those movies. It's like the fundamental elements that made the original so great are just not. There's no heart there. I think they're all empty. All of them are empty.
I think they're. I mean, if I had to pick a best, it would be probably Friday the 13th or Amityville Horror, as far as what Platinum's doing.
Yeah, Amityville
Dunes did. Again, but they get so caught up on sort of the big spectacle that they miss out on
what's scary
things.
sometimes. Dude, like Amityville kind of went pretty big with
it got
a lot of water and jumping.
got silly. Even the fly scene, which was really creepy in the original, is just like, and all of a sudden they're just everywhere and bursting. It's just not, it's a hard one. There's and I don't mind the slickness of them that much, because it's for a different generation, and that's what they're more used to and everything. And in that sense, I appreciate that. But yeah, it's hard to pick.
Is there a movie out there that you? Well, I mean, probably. To be honest, I'm with you in the sense that I do think they are at the very core. I think it's an empty product that they're putting out there, and I don't know how. I'm surprised it can remain empty through so many hands and so many. You get the director coming, but I was on set briefly of the Nightmare on Elm Street one in Chicago because I was living there, and somebody said, "Hey, you want to go down there and be an extra for a day?" And I remember just seeing the director, and he was probably, I think it was like 3/4 of the way, and the guy was so broken by then. every 10 minutes, the scenes were being interrupted by phone calls from producers getting on his case. He had only done music videos really before, and he was getting, I mean, I can't say, hey, he would have made a great film without interruption, but it was so clear that he was just being destroyed, and the cameraman wouldn't talk to him, basically, from what I could see, and the actors were kind of getting, you know, that you could see them talking behind their back. It was just one of those things where you're like, oh, wow, you know, it seemed not like a great situation.
Well, it's not encouraging when the director of the film, while promoting it, says, I said no, I didn't want to do it, and they kept coming after me. Like,
yeah, it's interesting.
This guy didn't want to direct the movie. Why didn't you go for somebody that really did?
Yeah, I think, no, you're exactly. But yeah, probably I'd pick Amityville because I remember not hating it, but then I love the original, so that's always the problem, you know.
I don't remember. I saw Amityville once in theaters back in New York, and I just remember being so offended because they really sold it like based on the original true story.
Right.
And knowing enough about it, and it was very exploitive, especially because didn't they have like the ghost of one of like the DeFeo girls or something, which I thought was
girl
unbelievably disrespectful,
right?
Because like that was a real little girl that got murdered, and that they're putting in the movie.
And it's a shame because it could have been really terrifying.
Yeah, could
Well,
have.
one thing we were talking about, and this gets me real shit. Actually, you asked me if I would want to remake anything. I'll tell you right now, I would kill, and I hope somebody gets
Street
this.
Trash.
Yeah, Street Trash. No, to remake Amityville, but as a story, incorporating the documentary we saw last week, basically, you know, which was all about what's the name of the son?
Daniel Lutz.
Yeah, it was Daniel Lutz, right? But taking the approach not of the original movie, but the approach of the almost like group psychosis that could have taken place, having a father who may have been into black magic and spirituality, kind of spreading this to a young boy who hates his guts. And so, in other words, looking at a psychodrama that could also open the doors to maybe paranormal and maybe not. If you could make a film that could walk that line, maybe that would be a fascinating movie.
Have you seen this documentary yet? Amityville Horror?
No.
It's really good. I mean, that's of all the information that's out there, the one big revelation is that, you know, Daniel claims that George was really into weird black magic and stuff like that.
And it's not just him. A couple of the others said they
the
saw
other people,
books.
the other people involved were like,
before he moved in.
He kind of was into that stuff and may have welcomed whatever happened there.
Well, they say because, you know, no one else has had psychic experiences in the house since or before. They're saying almost like if you were that open to it.
Yeah, open to the negative energy.
Yeah, and you had a negative family dynamic.
It.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Lutz says he saw him levitating wrenches and stuff where you're kind of watching the documentary going,
yeah. Well, I don't doubt that he believes that happened. Though.
Yeah.
But he was 10 at the time, so.
I guess before we wrap on remakes, I guess the other one is like, as a fan, because you're a filmmaker, and you're probably a fan first, right? We're all fans first. Is there a project out there that you'd like I often do think sometimes to myself, you know, I really would like to see an amazing Creature from the Black Lagoon by someone who really loves it, like a Guillermo del Toro, something like that. I wouldn't be against it because enough times it won't tarnish the original. The original is this beautiful piece.
Well, to me, it never tarnishes the original.
Right.
Yeah.
I love it.
But is there a project out there that you ever think back, I'd enjoy seeing that in the hands of someone, you know? I often think to myself, I'd just like to see another Clive Barker movie. It's not even about it's just one of those filmmakers where you're like, I would have really liked to have seen one more big vision by him, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting...
It's a very nerdy question, but we are on Geek Nation, so...
Well, yeah. You know, in a way, as far as horror goes and stuff like that, yeah, I'm with you. I would love to see a big Phantasm.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how you cast it. I don't know what you do with it.
Right.
Because those actors are so tied with the characters.
Yeah.
How you reinvent that. But I just love that world.
You know, it was kind of exciting several years back when Coscarelli was talking about like a brand new trilogy, like a big budget studio thing, which seemed like, wow, that sounds actually kind of cool. You know, it never happened, unfortunately, but I could see that. You know what we didn't mention, by the way, in terms of best remakes? Two that I really liked in the last decade, Dawn of the Dead and The Crazies. I liked both of those quite a bit.
Yeah. No, Dawn of the Dead was a lot of fun.
And The Blob.
And The Blob. Oh, my God.
How
do we forget The Blob? That's definitely one of my all-time favorites, the 86 Blob.
Is there still word about Zombie doing
that?
No, he's not doing it.
Definitely not.
But there's still, I know there's still talk about it.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. It'd be interesting to see what kind of because the take in the 80s is pretty radical, but really cool. The idea of it being more of having tentacles and doing all sorts of weird stuff that you can even imagine the original. So I wonder how you update that for now? Like, what would be today's version of the Blob?
I think another one that would be interesting. I mean, this is going really out there.
Mm-hmm.
Gasper knows From Beyond.
Yeah. Well,
that would be pretty wild.
That'd be wild, and a movie that I could only watch once.
The only thing weirder than that is the truth that I don't know if you've read this story, but he went up to Larry Cohen on the streets of New York, handed Larry Cohen his movies. Larry Cohen said, some bald guy came up to me, I'd never heard of him, called Gaspar Noé, handed me all his films, and has asked and now secured the rights to remake God Told Me To. For sure, for real.
That makes sense, though.
Yeah.
Because he could interpret
That's
that
really
any way he
interesting.
wants.
I think it's alive. I mean, I think that's the funny thing. I think a lot of Larry Cohen stuff could be real. Like, I think the stuff could be very relevant.
Well,
today.
you just said the Blob, and I was already thinking it already is the stuff. The stuff is actually even more fun version.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right.
It's alive. Definitely has a place in today.
Mhm.
I mean, I know they remade. I know they remade. I
But
never
under
saw
the
it.
radar, and it looked. Yeah, he's another guy who lets people he gets the money and remake.
I know. Was it the Drive director at one point?
Refn, yeah.
Expressed interest in Maniac Cop.
That's actually, I can tell you for sure, happening. But he's producing it. Yeah, because apparently,
that's really interesting.
yeah, apparently that guy's been really good friends with Bill Lustig for a really long time. One of the first
right?
people.
So,
yeah,
that makes sense.
Oh, Remake. Jesus, I can't believe the one that I would kill to do. Chud. I'd love to do Chud.
Yeah. See, that's the kind of film I would totally sign off on.
And that would be, and you could really do something awesome with that.
Yeah, because it has moments of awesome, and it has also moments of just and it's very much of its time, so it can be updated. I totally agree. I think they're the ones that we have a little bit of a love for. We love the VHS covers.
There's some pop culture.
There's pop culture
reference. The Simpsons talked about Chud before. And stuff like that.
But they're not perfect. They're not.
Right.
Yeah, and if you did that, at least then I can achieve my dream of doing Bud the Chud on your heels. I'll just be waiting.
You could shoot it just right
after.
Right after.
Another film that I saw the sequel before the original, and it hurt my mind as a kid. It actually did bad things.
And
to
I
me.
hated that poster because that poster
that
for Chud 2 had a bunch of Chuds on the poster, and it was nothing to do.
Oh,
well, we had Roy Frumkes on
and
recently.
it's now on DVD.
And the Street Trash poster in some countries was the Chud poster.
Yeah,
and they just wrote Street Trash on it.
Yeah,
hilarious.
It was
pretty
awesome.
awesome.
But yeah, no, that's a good choice. That's a good one to end on. Is there anything like that for you? Like, I mean, maybe Psycho. If Psycho was going to be remade, and it was, obviously Gus Van Sant did this silly thing, the shot-by-shot remake kind of thing. But if it was going to be reinterpreted, is there something out there you would bless with that?
I know who I would cast.
Oh,
as Norman.
Who would you cast?
Ezra Miller.
Ezra Miller. Who's he from?
We need to talk about Kevin.
Oh yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. No, I mean it's weird. I mean, I was partial to Andrew Garfield, who looks way too much like young Anthony Perkins, especially if you look at old stuff. No, I mean, the big idea I would have just, if I ever got the chance to retell Psycho, like Psycho was, it's a movie that set a lot of rules that hundreds of movies copied right after, so you can't do the exact same thing. You'd have to do a slightly different take on what people would be expecting of it. So to me, the only logical story would be to make Norman the main character and tell kind of the prequel story and the story of the first movie. Like, I would combine 1 and 4 and set it period and tell it in chronological order, with the third act being him getting super close to get caught. And, that's when Marion shows up, and then all of a sudden a detective, but seeing, him kill Mother and kind of assume her role and then become,
And you've been watching the show too, right? So
now I've been watching the show, and it's a completely unique take on the entire mythology and the backstory, and it's modern day. And I'm kind of excited because I have the first episode I had a rough idea of certain things they were doing because of how well I know the characters, but the second episode that just aired, I have zero idea where they're going with any of it.
They opened. I could see the hand of the Lost, right? One of the Lost creators a little more in the sense that I can tell now. They're going to go, and a little bit more like Twin Peaks without the weird, which is they're going to say, "Oh, there's an underbelly of a town. There's a town with this dark secret."
It's definitely
not just
Twin Peaks stuff.
Their characters.
I don't know how Norman and Norma fit into that.
Yeah,
but I hope it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fun so far. I don't.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny because somebody was complaining to. I mean, trust me, I get the brunt of Psycho complaints online, but somebody was just bitching to me about the new show, being like, they're changing the story. It's not right. It's not right. They're changing the story. And I was like, I hate to break it to you, but Hitchcock took plenty of liberties with Robert Bloch's novel.
Sure, right.
So if you really want to go back to the original story, Hitchcock changed it too. So,
quite a bit.
a lot. Yeah.
Right.
So, whatever. It's an interpretation. This is a new interpretation, just like Hitchcock's was an interpretation of a book that he changed a lot. So
Is the Birds remake still happening?
no, I mean that was
Naomi
something
Watts
that
was signed up at one point, and
thank
was
God,
Platinum
yeah.
Dunes.
Platinum
that was
Dunes
Platinum Dunes.
Platinum
Who
Dunes
was
is gonna do
directing
it.
it at that point?
I have no
They
idea,
didn't
but
have a director. They couldn't get one. They couldn't find. I don't think they could lock in a
That's
director.
funny.
it has been remade. It's called Birdemic 1 and 2.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
not
no
that
Naomi Watts.
I prefer the Hitchcock.
Oh, really?
But, yeah.
Shocking.
Obviously.
Hitchcock over James Wynn. Shame on you. Well, I think that's pretty good discussion on remakes. I think we've done it. Sequels, you'll have to come back for sequels.
Okay.
A whole nother can of
There
worms.
we go.
Hopefully
these
we'll be
days, you gotta have a sequel.
exactly. Hopefully we'll be able to actually talk about your film once we all have seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Soon.
absolutely. I would love to. I would love to talk about it.
All right. Well, Dave, thank you so much for coming on such short notice and jumping into our topic of the evening.
Thanks, guys.
Really
No, I
appreciate it.
Oh, well, you know what? Before we go, this should be this has to be fast.
Okay.
Least favorite remake. I forgot. Like, is there one? Not Platinum Dunes.
Not Platinum Dunes, just in general.
Because like I gotta say, like even though Wicker Man has this crazy value as people laugh at it, the Nicolas Cage, it really is one of the worst re-envisionings of anything I've ever seen in my whole life. Like I think the original is just this phenomenally odd little duck when you see it, and I love it. But man, when I sat down to watch that, just every decision, and forget even Nicolas Cage and the craziness, which works for YouTube, but it's actually every decision's poor. Everything about that movie, it's just stupid. It's just and so that's one that really kind of just irked me. I don't know. Is there other remakes or did we cover it with Platinum Dunes?
I mean, we've already mentioned Platinum Dunes and Psycho, which seem to be the bottom of the barrel.
I would say Kenneth Branagh's Frankenstein. It's pretty damn low.
Yeah, interesting.
That's
Frank Darabont's not a fan.
No, he's not, and that movie is lousy.
Wow.
Yeah.
It has one good scare though. I remember when he jumped. Well, as a kid, he jumps through and grabs the heart, and then jumps back through the window. I just remember that was a good jump. But
which is a shame because Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola one, was actually it's really solid remake.
Yeah, it's a nice looking movie.
Yeah,
because Gary Oldman's also really great in it.
Yeah.
Those are funny ones because they almost don't seem like remakes, right? The ones based on great books.
The Mummy, I don't like any of them. The Mummy, it's not
even horror though, is it? I mean, that's more.
It's
action.
not, but I mean, the original Mummy movies are considered horror, right?
Right.
So, I don't know. You know what? Here, last question. Well, actually, we already did kind of what you would like to see remade, didn't we?
Yeah.
But I remembered one that I would like to see remade because it's going to be airing on FEARnet next month. I would love to see a remake of Waxworks.
Oh yeah, that's a fun
one with David Warner and Zach Galligan.
I like it
because to me, I don't know why, but I really get excited of the idea of combining monsters. Like Monster Squad has all the Universal monsters, and Waxwork was a really cool way to get into each of their worlds, like a way for it to make sense for you to all of a sudden be.
Number 2 was good too, though. I remember.
I had moments.
Yeah.
I remember
enjoying
the
it.
haunting,
2 wasn't as successful.
Yeah. The haunting parody was really good.
Haunting, and I can't remember which one. Bruce Campbell was in a bit in part 2. It's the haunting one. Yeah, that one's great.
Well, and to go off something you just said.
That's a terrible remake. The Haunting.
Yeah. Okay.
It was a terrible.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Big budget. And doesn't have any of the. Well, it goes for big budgetary scares rather than Robert Wise was so effective with atmosphere.
Totally opposite.
But you just said if I was a studio head and somebody said remake anything, I would do Monster Squad, and I would as a fan, I don't know.
Platinum Dunes was trying,
but I wouldn't do it.
You don't. I think
because they go,
what
this
kids.
movie didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And kids don't like monsters. They don't go to monster movies.
But some of these animations have done pretty well recently. Maybe as an animated film, maybe Monster Squad could be reimagined in that way.
Like into the paranormal,
like the paranormal
crowd.
Yeah. There's been quite a lot this
Transylvania.
year.
Yeah.
So who knows?
That makes sense.
I mean, it's it's a beautiful little film as it is. But then there's movies like Night of the Creeps where I don't want it. I don't need. That was good. It's a nice.
But you kind of got that with Slither.
Right. Yeah. And Slither was actually a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, Slither.
That's a really fun film.
No.
All right. We've done remakes. We're putting a nail in the coffin in our remake
remakes
conversation.
Are done. If Rebecca tries to mention it, tough luck. She missed this
if anyone's
episode.
wondering, she really liked Evil Dead too. So
Oh, there we go.
she had a blast.
Oh,
so
yeah.
if you only follow the show for her, screw you.
Sorry.
Yet again, we were hoping she'd give birth during Evil Dead, but
It hasn't happened.
instead it's now.
And her kid will not have be born on Quentin Tarantino's birthday, but will be born on Method Man's birthday, as they told me today.
Wow.
So they're pretty excited about that. That they dodged that bullet.
I see.
That
I
awkward
see.
party moment. But anyway, thanks for joining us. We will be back next week, maybe to wrap up some more Evil Dead conversation, maybe with somebody from the film. We'll do our best. And,
Maybe.
And if not, we'll just bring on her baby infant to scream throughout.
Marnie will be our special guest.
Yeah,
next week.
exactly. Hear about her excitement. She'll give us an Enter the Void recap from the inside out. Okay.
Brutal.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks a lot, Dave, for coming
Thanks,
in.
guys.
Thanks, guys.